Aria Bennett, paused at the curb on 57th Street, hugging the collar of her threadbare sweater against the brisk Manhattan air. A sudden gust of wind made her eyes water. In truth, the emotion welling within her had little to do with the cold. She glanced up at the sleek, shimmering storefront of Lafleur & Co. Jewelers, an imposing two-story boutique with a facade of polished marble and gold-toned glass. A discreet sign reading "By appointment only" was displayed in swirling calligraphy, as if designed to intimidate casual passers-by. For most, it probably did. She closed her eyes for a moment. She had never been the type to care about expensive trinkets. Growing up, new books from the secondhand store felt like treasures. Yet here she was, about to cross the threshold of a world that dazzled with gemstone glitter under curated lights. And all because she wanted to surprise the love of her life and her future mother-in-law. Aria had been engaged to Christopher Harrington for just under 6 months, and while the tabloids thrilled in labeling him as the billionaire heir to a centuries-old shipping and finance empire, to her, he was simply Chris. The Chris who made midnight runs for ice cream because she craved chocolate chip cookie dough. The Chris who rearranged his entire Monday schedule to join her at a volunteer soup kitchen each week. The Chris who believed life was meant for sharing, not hoarding. Aria suspected that most of Chris's extended circle had no idea of his philanthropic leanings, or that he'd all but severed ties with the old guard Harrington approach to building wealth above all else. The confrontation with his father had been difficult, but Chris was resolute. "Money without purpose is meaningless," he'd said. Aria loved him all the more for it. Yet navigating his family was a different story altogether. She had only recently met his mother, Helena Harrington, a woman renowned for her style, elegance, and patronage of the arts. Helena was not cruel. In fact, she'd been civil, polite even, when Aria had first joined them for dinner at the Harrington townhouse. But Aria sensed Helena's polite aloofness, as though the older woman quietly questioned her son's choice. Chris had reassured her. "She'll come around," he'd said. "She's just used to the society crowd, that's all." But Aria wanted more than a distant acceptance. She wanted Helena to know they could share a meaningful bond. She wanted to give her future mother-in-law something that conveyed genuine respect and thoughtfulness, rather than a mere extravagant present. Then, Aria discovered Helena's fondness for vintage cameo brooches and old-world craftsmanship. That was how she'd ended up on 57th Street, determined to find a piece so distinctive it might speak across the mother-fiancé divide. Drawing a fortifying breath, Aria gripped the door handle and walked inside Lafleur & Co. The boutique's interior was even more magnificent than its exterior. Polished black and white marble floors, carefully placed velvet settees, and overhead chandeliers that gleamed like upside-down bouquets of light. Display cases lined the floor, each guarded by a staff member in crisp black attire. It was conspicuously quiet, the hush broken only by the muted murmurs of discreet conversation. Aria's boots squeaked against the floor as she approached the front desk. She was keenly aware that her outfit was far from typical in these circles. Fitted black jeans, those slightly scuffed ankle boots, and a burgundy sweater pilled at the elbows. Her hair was wind-tangled, and her cheeks still bore the slight pink flush from the gusty weather. At the counter, a silver-haired receptionist wearing an impeccably tailored blazer looked up, arching a brow at Aria. "May I help you?" she asked in a tone that suggested surprise anyone so plainly dressed would wander in. Aria swallowed. "Hello. Yes, I'm looking for a vintage cameo brooch, or possibly a cameo ring. Something quite special. I heard Lafleur & Co. has a unique vintage collection." "By appointment only," the receptionist said coolly. "Did you call ahead?" "I didn't realize I needed to, but I came across your website. It said walk-ins were welcome, though appointments were preferred." Aria was certain of it. She'd seen it in small print. The receptionist's lips pursed. "We generally prefer appointments for special requests, especially vintage pieces. If you'd like, I can set one up for you next week, perhaps." Aria felt her stomach plunge. Next week would be too late. Helena's birthday dinner was in just 4 days. She couldn't simply arrive empty-handed. "Is there any chance I can see the collection today? I'm only in town for a short while, and I'd be grateful." Let me see if any of our associates are available, the receptionist said, sounding skeptical. She picked up the phone receiver, pressed a button, and turned partially away. Her words were low, but Arya could still catch phrases like, young woman here, and no appointment. Arya took a breath, shoulders tensing. She told herself not to jump to conclusions. After all, Lafleur & Co. catered to an exclusive clientele, many of whom were undoubtedly high-net-worth individuals, celebrities, or aristocrats. She was, to them, a random walk-in, someone who might simply be curious. She tried not to feel offended. Moments later, the receptionist ended the call and slid off her stool. "Follow me," she said, leading Arya past the main showroom into a more secluded area. The walls here were lined with mirrors, and half-circles of jewel cases created small alcoves, each dedicated to a different era or style. A second staff member approached them, a tall woman with impeccable posture and a name tag that read Genevieve, Senior Associate. Her blazer looked custom-fitted, and her black hair was styled into a sleek chignon. She nodded briefly at the receptionist, who promptly retreated. Genevieve turned her assessing gaze on Arya. "You're interested in our cameo jewelry?" "Yes," Arya said. "Preferably mid to late Victorian-era cameo in good condition. I'm looking for a gift." She tried to sound confident, hoping the nerves didn't show through in her voice. Genevieve's expression remained neutral. "The Victorian cameos we carry are well known for their intricacy, miss." Arya realized the woman was waiting for her name. "Arya Bennett," she offered. "Ms. Bennett, these items tend to be quite expensive," Genevieve continued. "The craftsmanship is rare, and they often have historical provenance. Some are 5 figures, sometimes 6, depending on provenance." Arya had expected the possibility of a steep price. This was the best vintage jeweler in the city, but the tone Genevieve used, that polite arch note, stung, as if she was warning Arya that a cameo might be beyond her means. "I understand," Arya replied, trying not to bristle. "I've prepared for that." Genevieve turned to a display case. She removed a set of keys from her pocket and unlocked the sliding door. "Well, we do have a selection of cameo pieces here. I'll show you a few." Arya leaned in, admiring the row of cameo brooches and rings nestled on plush velvet stands. One had an intricately carved female profile in pure white against an amber backdrop, framed by a circle of small pearls. Another was more elaborate, with tiny diamonds encrusting the edges. She found herself drawn to a simpler cameo ring featuring an exquisitely carved figure of a woman holding a rose. Something about its understated elegance stood out. "That ring," Arya said quietly, pointing. "May I see it?" Genevieve lifted the ring from the display and set it on a black suede tray. The overhead light played across the cameo's carved planes. Arya's heart fluttered at the artistry. This might be exactly what Helena would love. Delicate, historical, but with a charm that was both feminine and refined. "It's from the 1880s, Genevieve said. Hand-carved shell cameo set in 14K gold. The craftsmanship is excellent, though it's not the highest value cameo here." She gestured at a larger, flashier piece. "We do have this cameo brooch from the 1850s with rubies and—" "I prefer the ring," Arya said with a gentle shake of her head. "It's perfect." Genevieve's carefully composed features flickered with something akin to skepticism. "Perhaps you'd like to try it on, Miss Bennett?" Arya nodded. Genevieve slipped the ring onto Arya's finger. It fit her ring finger surprisingly well, just a tad loose, but it would be easy enough to resize. "I'll take it," Arya said, voice hushed. She saw the price tag, $24,500. It wasn't cheap, but she'd saved a substantial sum for this exact purpose, wanting Helena to have something that genuinely spoke to her passion for antiques. Arya also knew Chris would happily foot the bill, but she felt strongly about doing this on her own. Genevieve paused, blinking as though she hadn't expected Arya to agree so quickly. Then she forced a reserved smile. "Very good, Miss Bennett. I'll write up the paperwork." Relief spread through Arya. She had come here half dreading a confrontation, but it seemed they'd be able to complete the purchase with minimal fuss. She followed Genevieve toward the long, curved counter at the back of the alcove. The senior associate bent down to retrieve the necessary forms. A moment later, Genevieve straightened and gave Arya an almost pitying look. "Ms. Bennett, to proceed, I'll need to run a credit check or see documented proof of funds." As you can understand, with pieces of this caliber, we require certain verifications. Our policy is a 25% non-refundable deposit if you are not paying in full. Arya stiffened. I'm prepared to pay in full. She swallowed, her mind racing. She had the credit limit on her personal card, but it was near its max after a flurry of wedding-related expenses, and she hated the idea of tapping too far into Chris's generosity. She also had her personal checks from her separate bank account, into which Chris had never once demanded she deposit his money. Uncertain, she asked, "Do you accept personal checks?" Genevieve's brows rose. This time, the condescension was clear. "We do accept them, but the piece remains here until the check clears." "That's fine," Arya said quietly. "How many days does that typically take?" "Up to 7 business days," Genevieve replied, which, at this point, would certainly exceed next Monday. Arya's heart dropped. Helena's birthday dinner was in 4 days. She'd been hoping to present the cameo ring that same evening. 7 business days was not possible. "What if I pay by wire transfer?" she ventured. Genevieve inclined her head. "That would expedite matters, though we still require some confirmation that the transfer is valid. Usually, we ask for a letter from your banking institution if it's a same-day request. Otherwise, we do an official hold until the funds arrive." Arya took a steadying breath. Of course, a high-end jewelry store would require these safeguards. They probably had more than enough experiences with fraudulent transactions. Yet, beneath Genevieve's words, Arya sensed an accusation that she was a casual browser biting off more than she could chew, unprepared for real-world luxury protocols. "All right," Arya managed, trying to keep her voice calm. "I can initiate a wire transfer now." Genevieve sighed. "Ms. Bennett, there's also the matter of the ring's insurance coverage. Typically, for items over a certain value, we strongly advise the client to have an insurance rider. Do you have one?" "Aye," Arya began, faltering. She didn't typically buy items that required specialized insurance riders. Genevieve nodded, as though her point had been proven. "It's quite standard. If you don't have a policy, we can connect you with an appraiser, though that process also takes time. Or you can pay in full and sign a waiver that indemnifies Lafleur & Co. from any liability if the ring is lost or damaged before you secure separate insurance." Arya realized she was gripping the edge of the counter. "I'll sign the waiver," she said, "and do the wire transfer." Genevieve retrieved another set of papers from behind the counter. "You'll need to fill out these forms, plus I'll need to see your photo ID. If you'd like a private office to do this, I can arrange it." A flicker of annoyance crossed Arya's expression, though she fought to keep her tone civil. "That's not necessary. I can do it here." While Arya began writing down her personal details, Genevieve stepped away to speak quietly with a coworker. Arya overheard snippets again. "I don't think she's serious, or better confirm with management." Her cheeks flushed. It was humiliating, but she pressed on. All she wanted was a cameo ring for her future mother-in-law, something that might help them bond. She refused to be deterred by a staff member's snobbery. Genevieve returned a moment later with a thin-lipped expression. "Ms. Bennett, my manager has asked if we could see a bank statement or letter of credit. It's not personal, I promise. It's just how we safeguard ourselves." Arya felt her stomach twist. She didn't carry her bank statements around, nor had she anticipated needing a letter of credit. "I can open my phone banking app," she asked lamely. Genevieve's expression suggested that was laughable. "We require official documentation, Miss Bennett. Would you like to come back later with the proper paperwork?" Come back later. That would not help. She stared at Genevieve, thoughts reeling. She could call Chris. He'd fix this in an instant. His personal wealth would put any suspicion to rest. But if she brought Chris's name into it now, it felt like admitting she needed his last name and fortune to be taken seriously. She wanted to do this on her own terms, but pride alone might cost her the cameo ring. With a resigned sigh, she said, "Could you at least put a temporary hold on the ring for me while I gather my documents?" Genevieve pressed her lips together. "We usually only hold items for 24 hours with a deposit, non-refundable, of course." "How much deposit?" Arya asked quietly. 25%, Genevieve repeated. "That's 6,125. We'd need that today." Arya's heart sank. She didn't have enough space on her personal credit card right now to cover that deposit, plus have enough left for her other expenses. She'd intentionally kept her finances separate from Chris's, wanting to stand on her own. She did have some savings, but transferring them to her checking account might take a day or two, time she didn't have. Genevieve caught the flicker in Arya's eyes. The senior associate's posture straightened in a subtle gesture of triumph. "Perhaps you should return when you're better prepared," she said in a clipped tone. "You'll need the deposit and the relevant paperwork. That ring won't be going anywhere today anyway." A part of Arya wanted to walk out of Lafleur & Co. and never come back. But another part, her determined side, refused to walk away from the cameo. It was perfect for Helena, and no clerk's condescending attitude would stop her. However, the reality was that she needed an immediate solution. Feeling tears threaten to prickle behind her eyes, Arya spun on her heel and hurried out, ignoring the amused look from the receptionist as she passed the front desk. She paused on the sidewalk outside, drawing in shaky breaths of cool winter air. She pressed her phone to her forehead, trying to decide what to do. Did she tell Chris about this fiasco? He'd be furious that anyone made his fiancé feel judged. He'd whisk her back inside with a quick phone call and have the cameo ring purchased outright, but that would overshadow her attempt at an independent gesture. Yet, the bottom line was she couldn't front $6,125 on the spot without shifting money around or revealing her engagement to Christopher Harrington. To the staff at Lafleur & Co., she was just a random woman in a battered sweater, evidently out of her league. A flicker of anger rose in Arya's chest. They hadn't even asked her about why she loved that cameo. They had zero interest in connecting with her beyond verifying her worth. She thought of her fiancé's gentle encouragement. "If you ever need anything, call me." Chris had made that promise from the start of their relationship. More than once, Arya's fierce independence had clashed with the practical reality of his enormous wealth. She insisted on paying for her own groceries, for example, or chipping in for half the rent whenever they traveled, while he found her reluctance a bit endearing, but always respected it. Finally, Arya tapped a single name on her phone, Chris. She told herself it was only a call to vent, not to beg him for solutions. He picked up immediately, voice brimming with warmth. "Arya, hey, are you okay?" She realized her breath was still ragged, and she forced herself to speak calmly. "I'm outside Lafleur & Co., trying to buy your mom a cameo ring. It's perfect for her, Chris, but they won't let me purchase it without jumping through hoops. They basically want official paperwork proving I can afford it." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Chris's voice, quiet with concern, said, "They're refusing to sell it to you?" Arya winced. In a roundabout way, yes. They made a big issue about deposits, wire transfers, insurance riders, and I get it's standard, but the tone was, her voice caught, condescending. "Don't move," Chris said, a sudden fierceness entering his tone. "I'm about 5 minutes away in a meeting, but I'm ending it now. I'll be there soon." "Chris," she began, but he'd already hung up. She stood there, phone still in her hand, gazing at the passing yellow taxis. Did she want him to come storming in to fix this? She felt torn between gratitude and frustration. Yet she couldn't deny a surge of relief at the thought of seeing him. 15 minutes later, Arya spotted Chris's familiar figure striding down the sidewalk, all 6'1" of him, exuding purposeful energy. His wavy brown hair was parted neatly, and he wore a slim-cut charcoal coat over a tailored navy suit. Even in the busy hustle of Midtown, he stood out, a subtle aura of confidence in each step. She waved a little, and he broke into that boyish grin she loved, crossing the final yards to her in 3 quick strides. "I can't believe they gave you trouble," he said, voice tight. She could see the storm clouds of anger flickering beneath the surface. "I mean, I can believe it. This happens more often than I'd like to admit, unfortunately. Snobbery is alive and well." Arya gave a small shrug, forcing a light laugh. "It's fine, honestly. I just wanted to get this ring for your mom without." Chris cupped her cheek with one hand, guiding her gaze to meet his. "You're my fiancé. They have no right to treat you like a second-class citizen because you're not dripping in designer labels." She took his hand gently. "I know that, but please, Chris, don't make a huge scene. I wanted to do this on my own. If they simply don't want to sell it to me, that's their loss. He sighed, glancing at the doors to Lafleur and Co. behind her. I understand, but I hate that you felt embarrassed or demeaned. Let's just see if they'll change their tune once they realize who you are. If they don't, I'll respect your choice to walk away. I promise I won't be overbearing, all right? Deal. Hand in hand, they stepped back inside. Arya felt a wave of tension at the hush that greeted them. Perhaps the staff recognized Chris Harrington on sight. Or maybe it was just that his presence, the well-tailored coat, that aura of importance, contrasted so sharply with Arya's modest attire. The same silver-haired receptionist blinked in surprise. "Welcome to Lafleur & Co., she said, her voice artificially bright. "How may we assist you today?" Chris's jaw tightened. "We're here to speak with one of your associates about a cameo ring." The receptionist's gaze flicked to Arya, evidently recalling her from earlier, and then landed back on Chris, who gave a curt nod but did not elaborate. The receptionist hopped off her stool, smoothing her skirt. "Yes, of course. Let me find Genevieve, our senior associate." They made their way to the same alcove area where Genevieve appeared, wearing that same aloof expression. She froze upon seeing Chris. Recognition flickered. She might not have known precisely who he was, but she definitely sensed somebody important had arrived. Arya spoke first. "I'm back to finalize the purchase of that Victorian cameo ring. This is my fiancé, Christopher Harrington." Genevieve swallowed hard. Even if she didn't recognize the family name, she could tell from his posture and the faint air of absolute confidence that Chris was not merely a run-of-the-mill fiancé. "Very well," Genevieve said, forcing a polite smile. "May I show you the ring as well, Mr. Harrington? Or—" "No need," Chris said, voice calm but chilly. "Arya's the one choosing this gift, and her decision is final. I understand from her that you've been quite adamant about documented proof of funds or a deposit. I can provide the funds immediately, in full, no checks, no wire transfer waiting period. We'll pay right here, right now." Genevieve blinked, caught off guard. "Of course, if you have the capability to do that. But, Mr. Harrington, for such a high-value piece, we do have standard procedures." Chris drew a small black wallet from the inside pocket of his coat, extracted a thick metal credit card, and placed it lightly on the glass display. "I suspect your standard procedures will accept this." Genevieve's eyes widened when she caught a glimpse of the name, Christopher James Harrington. There was no missing that it was a Centurion-level card known for sky-high limits. She swallowed. "Certainly, Mr. Harrington. We'd be happy to accommodate you." A strangled feeling gripped Arya's chest. She was half grateful. This would expedite everything, but also half annoyed that this was exactly the scenario she'd hoped to avoid. She pressed her lips together, deciding that fighting about it in the store would only worsen the situation. Genevieve scurried to retrieve the cameo ring from the locked case. She set it before them like an offering on a velvet tray. Chris didn't even glance at it. "Arya, is this the piece you wanted?" "Yes," she said softly, leaning forward to run her finger along the cameo's smooth surface. "It's beautiful." He nodded, never taking his eyes off her. "Then let's do it." Genevieve placed the ring box aside, whipped out the payment forms. "If you'll just sign here, Mr. Harrington, we'll process the—" "Arya will sign," Chris interrupted. "It's her purchase." Arya met his gaze, understanding the olive branch he was extending. He was providing the means, but giving her the agency. She exhaled, letting go of the tension. "I'll sign," she confirmed quietly. While Genevieve fiddled with the payment terminal, the store manager, a tall man in a pinstripe suit named Mr. Lockwood, hurried over, evidently alerted that a very high-net-worth client was present. He performed a slight bow, greeting Chris and Arya with an obsequious smile. "Mr. Harrington, Ms. Bennett, welcome to Lafleur & Co. May I say you have chosen an exquisite piece from our collection. We deeply value our clientele's trust." Chris cut in, voice cold. "You'll forgive me for not feeling the warmth of that deep value when my fiancé was treated like an untrustworthy child earlier." Mr. Lockwood's face tightened. "I'm sorry to hear there was any misunderstanding. Please rest assured that Ms. Bennett's business is as important to us as—" "Let's not pretend otherwise," Arya said, glancing at the floor. She was not usually confrontational, but frustration churned in her. I was told I needed bank statements and a large deposit, and you made it more than clear you doubted I had the means. I understand verifying funds, but the attitude was humiliating. Mr. Lockwood spread his hands in a gesture of appeasement. We are a small boutique that deals in extremely high-value items. We have to be selective with walk-ins, as you might imagine. I do apologize if the experience felt personal. Chris's voice sharpened. When your staff automatically dismiss someone based on how they're dressed or whether they look wealthy enough, that is personal. This ring isn't $1 million piece. It's under 30,000, yet you placed endless hurdles. That's your policy? Genevieve stared at her feet, while Mr. Lockwood looked flustered. I can see there has been a serious lapse. Naturally, we want every patron to feel welcome. Chris fixed him with a long, level stare. But do they? Or do you only welcome those who appear wealthy on first glance? I assure you, Mr. Harrington, we do not intentionally discriminate, Mr. Lockwood insisted. We have many clients from various backgrounds. Enough, Arya said softly, not wanting to prolong the conversation. I'm not here to get someone fired. I only want the ring. She reached for the pen, signed the invoice, and inserted Chris's card into the machine. A beep, a few seconds processing, and the sale was finalized. Genevieve wrapped the cameo ring in a plush velvet box, placed it in a small Lafleur & Co. prosody rate % bag, and offered it to Arya with a subdued, "Thank you for shopping with us. We hope to see you again." Arya took the bag, feeling no joy in the interaction. The ring itself was breathtaking, but the entire experience had left a bitter taste in her mouth. Chris took a moment to glance at the manager. I hope, for your sake, that the next woman who comes in wearing jeans or an old sweater doesn't get the same runaround. Mr. Lockwood opened his mouth as if about to retort or promise improvements, but Arya and Chris were already walking away. They stepped onto 57th Street's bustling sidewalk. Arya released a breath, turning her face skyward. The clouds overhead had darkened, hinting snow might be on the way. Chris rested a hand at the small of her back. I'm sorry, he said softly. She let out a small laugh, half relief, half lingering frustration. You have nothing to be sorry about. This was on them. I know, but I hate that you had to rely on me to prove you deserve their respect. I hate that too, Arya admitted. But there wasn't another choice. I wanted to get this cameo in time for your mother's birthday. I just wish they'd treated me kindly from the start, whether or not I could afford anything. Chris exhaled slowly. I understand, truly. Still, let's not let them ruin the gift. Mom's going to love it. His voice warmed. You realize this means the world to me, that you'd go so far out of your comfort zone to bond with her. Arya's cheeks flushed with affection. I'd do anything for you. And besides, I want Helena to know I see her as family, not some distant figure to be tolerated. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, guiding her down the sidewalk. We can talk about the store fiasco more if you want, but let's get you somewhere warm first, maybe a cafe, or... His phone buzzed in his pocket, drawing his attention. He glanced at the screen. It's my mother, he said, arching a brow. Maybe she's calling to see if we'll be around for the dinner early. Arya nodded. Go ahead, I'll flag down a taxi. She waved her arm as Chris answered the call. Sure enough, a cab slowed to the curb. Arya climbed in and Chris slid in beside her, still on the phone. Hi, Mom. Yes, we just finished an errand near Midtown. How are you? He fell silent, presumably listening. Arya watched him, gauging his expressions. He was normally so composed, but occasionally, like now, she saw a flicker of tension in his brow. He said, That's unexpected. Are you sure you don't need me? No, it's fine. Arya and I can be there if you want. Another pause. Of course. All right. I love you, Mom. When he ended the call, Arya tilted her head curiously. Everything okay? He managed a small smile. Yes and no. She's at Harrington HQ. My father is in London, so she's signing some documents for one of their philanthropic arms. Apparently, some drama arose at the office. Oh, he shrugged. They're short-staffed for a charity event next week, and Mom's scrambling. She sounded more stressed than usual. I offered to help, but she said not to worry. That was probably her subtle way of saying, I'll handle it alone. I'm used to this. Arya's voice gentled. Your mother is formidable, but maybe she'd be open to help if you pressed. I mean, if she's anything like you, she doesn't want to admit needing assistance. Chris chuckled. Yeah, that's definitely a family trait. But let's see. If she changes her mind, she'll let me know. Arya gave him a reassuring smile. She felt a wave of warmth at the idea of not just giving Helena a cameo, but maybe also supporting her in this philanthropic scramble. Who knew? Maybe a shared passion for doing good could be the bridge between them. 4 days later, the Harrington townhouse on the Upper East Side glowed with the warm lights of a private birthday dinner. Arya arrived wearing a knee-length midnight blue dress that flattered her lean figure, a pair of understated heels, and a small gold pendant around her neck. Her nice jewelry, which Chris had given her last Valentine's Day. She felt a swirl of nerves stepping inside. The townhouse was all polished hardwood floors, tall windows, and antiques that whispered of old money. Familiar staff quietly welcomed her, taking her coat. Then there was Helena Harrington herself, gliding into the foyer in a sophisticated burgundy ensemble, her silver blonde hair pulled back in an elegant twist. "Arya, my dear," Helena greeted, offering a gracious half-smile. She leaned in to offer a polite kiss on Arya's cheek. "I'm so pleased you could join me for dinner." Chris stepped in from behind, hugging his mother. "Happy birthday, Mom." "Thank you, darling." Her gaze returned to Arya. "I hear you've been busy." Chris mentioned some sort of cameo ring. The corners of her mouth hinted at curiosity. Heat rushed to Arya's cheeks, remembering the fiasco. "Yes, but it's a surprise, though I suppose it won't be after tonight." She managed a small smile. Helena's eyes flicked with interest. "I must say, I was touched you remembered my fondness for cameo jewelry. It's a bit of a family tradition. My grandmother had a large collection." She paused, giving Arya a more thoughtful look. "Thank you, my dear. You didn't have to go to such trouble." Arya could practically hear Genevieve's dismissive tone echo in her head. The trouble, indeed. Still, she forced a brighter expression. "I'm happy to. I know how important those heirloom pieces can be." A butler quietly cleared his throat, gesturing for them to move into the drawing room. Two other guests, an older couple who were longtime family friends, were present, sipping from crystal glasses. Introductions were made, and Arya spent the next hour making polite conversation, all the while feeling Helena's gaze drifting over to her, as though analyzing her behavior. Finally, dinner was served. The table was set with fine china and silverware so polished it might have been brand new. They dined on a 3-course meal prepared by a private chef. Arya let Chris handle most of the conversation, though she chimed in when asked about her volunteer work at a local children's center. Helena seemed politely intrigued, but not effusive. When dessert arrived, a beautifully frosted white cake bearing delicate sugar roses, Chris lightly tapped Arya's knee beneath the table, giving her a nod. She took the cue, rising from her seat, cameo ring box in hand. Helena straightened, curiosity lighting her features. Arya offered her a slightly shaky smile. "Mrs. Harrington, Helena, I wanted to give you something for your birthday, something that I hope shows how much I value having you in my life." She handed Helena the black velvet box. In the hush of the dining room, Helena opened it. Arya watched as the older woman's expression shifted from polite expectation to genuine wonder. She lifted the cameo ring, turning it delicately in her fingers. "It's exquisite," Helena breathed. Even the older couple leaned in to see the design. The intricacy of the carving caught the candlelight. "It's from the 1880s, Arya said quietly. "I know you appreciate that era's craftsmanship. The cameo depicts a woman with a rose, which felt romantic. I thought you'd like it." Helena's eyes shone for a moment, her composed mask briefly slipping. "My grandmother had something similar, though it was a brooch. I've always loved cameos." She exhaled, looking at Arya with an unguarded warmth. "This is thoughtful indeed." A wave of relief washed over Arya. Despite everything that happened at the store, the moment of seeing Helena's genuine appreciation made it feel worth it. Chris grinned from across the table, reaching over to give Arya's hand a quick squeeze under the cloth. Helena delicately slipped the cameo ring onto her right hand. "It fits quite well, surprisingly. We might need a small adjustment, but only by half a size." Her voice had softened. "I must confess, Arya, that I didn't anticipate such a meaningful gift. I appreciate the time and care you put into this choice." Arya smiled, her shoulders loosening. "I'm so glad you like it." Helena studied her for a moment. After dinner, perhaps we could chat in the sitting room, just the two of us. I'd love to know more about this ring and your search for it. Arya nodded, heart fluttering. Yes, she thought. She welcomed the chance to truly connect. In Bates. When coffee and brandy were served in the smaller sitting room, Helena and Arya took seats by a marble fireplace. Chris remained behind in the dining area with the other guests, presumably to give them space. Helena set her coffee cup down, turning her attention to Arya. I know Christopher quite well, but I'm still learning about you, she began. You volunteer at a children's center? Christopher mentioned that once. Yes, Arya said, smiling. It's a local nonprofit for underprivileged children, mostly after-school programs, mentorship, tutoring. Helena nodded, interest genuine. That's commendable. I used to volunteer quite a bit as well, arts charities, social galas. Lately, it's mostly philanthropic liaison work with my husband's company, but I do enjoy more hands-on involvement when time permits. Arya leaned forward slightly. Chris said you were dealing with a shortage of volunteers for an upcoming Harrington Foundation event. Could I help? You'd volunteer? Helena asked, brows raised. It's a bit last minute, not exactly glamorous. More about coordinating raffle items, silent auctions, contacting donors. We're also setting up a new scholarship fund for the arts. The event is in 1 week, and I'm missing half my staff. Arya nodded earnestly. I'd love to. I'm sure I can juggle some time. If you're comfortable with that, of course. A flicker of gratitude touched Helena's features. Actually, that would be wonderful. Are you sure you're up for the challenge? It might be chaotic. Arya's grin widened. I thrive in chaos. Helena allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Then it settled. Thank you, Arya. She glanced at the cameo ring on her finger. And, for this, it's quite beautiful, truly. Arya was about to respond when Helena's gaze shifted. I sensed there was a story behind acquiring it. You mentioned you had some trouble? Arya hesitated. She disliked complaining, but she supposed it wouldn't hurt to mention how exclusive some of these boutiques could be. Let's just say I faced some skepticism from the staff at the jewelry store. They weren't too eager to help someone dressed like me. Helena's expression grew pensive. Yes, I've encountered that subtle kind of snobbery before, though rarely aimed at me. It's unfortunate, she sighed. We can only hope they learn not to judge so quickly. I hope so too. They shared a moment of quiet understanding. Then Helena patted Arya's hand lightly. I'm glad you didn't let them stop you, and I'm even more pleased you're joining me for the Harrington Foundation event. We'll put your energy and passion to good use, I assure you. Warmth spread through Arya. She realized, in that moment, she and Helena might have more in common than either initially suspected. Over the next week, Arya found herself working closely with Helena and a skeleton crew to prepare the Harrington Foundation's annual Winter Philanthropy Gala. The event would raise money for scholarships in music, dance, and theater for underprivileged youth. Helena had a sprawling desk inside Harrington HQ, stacked high with invitations, donor lists, seating charts, and silent auction item descriptions. Arya hopped between phone calls, data entry, and physically organizing items for the auction. Though Helena maintained a calm exterior, Arya quickly saw how stressed she was. Half the assigned staff had fallen ill, and the others were juggling multiple tasks. Vendors threatened last-minute cancellations, donors wanted guaranteed VIP seating. Arya did her best to help, fielding phone calls and finalizing paperwork, even running errands across the city when a caterer needed confirmation. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and each evening she came home to Chris, who'd greet her with a grateful hug. Thank you for helping Mom, he said one night, offering her a mug of chamomile tea. It's good you two are spending time together, even if it's frantic. She texted me that you've been a godsend. Arya smiled, settling on the couch beside him. She's incredible, actually. She's not just a trophy wife or a society hostess, she's hands-on. She knows the donors and participants by name, and she's passionate about the cause. Chris wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Sometimes I think Mom's as philanthropic as I am. Dad doesn't get as personally involved, but she definitely does. I'm really glad you're discovering each other this way. They shared a contented hush. Arya found her heart lighter these days, grateful she could connect with Helena in a genuine way. On the day of the gala, the Harrington Foundation had reserved a grand ballroom in one of Midtown's finest hotels. By late afternoon, the space was being transformed. White linen-covered tables were arranged around a central stage, strings of fairy lights were draped along the balcony railings, and an enormous banner reading Harrington Winter Philanthropy Gala hung overhead. Arya dashed around in plain black slacks and a comfortable blouse, helping finalize the seating plan. She consulted with the event coordinator, checked name cards, and lined up the silent auction items on display tables. Among the items were rare books, an autographed violin from a famous musician, designer handbags, exotic travel packages, and a discreet area showcasing vintage jewelry, courtesy of a collector who donated pieces each year. Arya swallowed an ironic smile at the memory of her own cameo ring saga. At around 5 p.m., Helena arrived, stunning in a floor-length gown of shimmering deep purple. She wore the cameo ring on her right hand, a small but cherished detail that made Arya feel proud. "Arya, my dear," Helena greeted, sounding slightly breathless. "The seating fiasco, have we resolved it?" "I spoke to the coordinator. The 2 late RSVPs will have to join table 14. And in exchange, we're moving the Smithsons to table 6 near the stage since they donated that scholarship." Helena exhaled a sigh of relief. "Perfect. I don't know how I managed last year without you." Arya grinned, her cheeks warming. "I'm happy to help. Is there anything else you need before the guests start arriving?" "Just check with the musicians. Ensure they have everything they require. Then, dear, I suggest you get changed into your formal attire. You deserve to enjoy the gala, not just run around behind the scenes." Arya nodded. She had a simple but elegant black gown waiting in a side dressing room, per Helena's suggestion. She scurried off to confirm the string quartet was all set, adjusting music stands, verifying set lists. Everything was in order. By 6:30 p.m., the first wave of guests arrived, men in tuxedos, women in evening gowns. Servers circulated with champagne flutes and canapes. A small orchestra played softly in the background. Arya, now changed into her black floor-length dress, circulated through the crowd, greeting guests, ensuring they had programs for the evening's schedule. She felt a slight tremor of nerves. This was the kind of black-tie society crowd she wasn't used to, but the knowledge that she'd played such a central role in planning gave her confidence. Chris arrived shortly thereafter in a classic tuxedo with a subtle patterned bow tie, looking dashing enough to steal Arya's breath. He spotted her near the auction tables and grinned, crossing the floor to greet her. "You look amazing," he murmured, pressing a light kiss to her temple. She blushed. "You're not too shabby yourself." He surveyed the elegantly decorated space. "Everything looks spectacular. Where's Mom?" Arya pointed to the far side of the ballroom, where Helena was chatting with a group of donors. The cameo ring glittered softly under the chandelier. Arya's heart warmed at the sight. An hour into the gala, the event was in full swing. Guests mingled, browsed the silent auction items, and pledged large donations for the new art scholarship. A quiet excitement buzzed through the room. Arya helped with last-minute tasks, guiding a few VIPs who'd arrived late to their assigned tables. Then, near the silent auction display, she heard her name. "Arya." She turned to see an older woman with silver-streaked hair. Adelaide Crawford, one of Helena's longtime friends. Adelaide wore an emerald green gown and a warm smile. "Helena's told me so much about you. I hear you've been instrumental in making tonight happen." Arya ducked her head modestly. "It's mostly Helena's work. I just helped with organizational odds and ends." Adelaide chuckled. "Nonsense. She sings your praises. You know, Helena rarely offers unqualified compliments. The fact that she's praising you means she's quite taken with you." Heat rushed to Arya's cheeks. "She's been wonderful to work with." Adelaide's gaze flicked to Arya's left hand. "I see you're not wearing the Harrington heirloom ring. Are you planning something simpler for the wedding band?" Arya smiled crookedly, lifting her left hand. Chris had given her a simple diamond engagement ring, but nothing ostentatious. "Yes, I like minimal designs. Plus, I'm not big on wearing large gemstones." "Some in the Harrington clan might be shocked at that," Adelaide teased, though her tone was kind. "But I can see why Christopher's enamored." Arya glanced toward Chris across the room, where he was chatting with a group of business acquaintances. He caught her eye and gave a soft grin. Her heart fluttered. Adelaide sighed reminiscently. Ah, to be young and in love. Well, dear, keep doing what you're doing. You're already winning Helena's heart, I can see it. Arya felt gratitude well up. Thank you, Miss Crawford. Shortly after the formal program began, Helena took the stage, welcomed everyone, spoke passionately about the importance of arts education, and introduced a few shining success stories. Young recipients of previous scholarships who had gone on to thrive in music or dance. Applause rang through the ballroom. Then it was time for the silent auction to close, and the excitement grew as the winning bidders were announced. A swirl of applause and laughter filled the air. Arya found herself near the stage, helping present the final tallies on the scholarship fund. When the last item was called, a particularly rare painting from a local artist's estate, the crowd applauded the winning bidder, who turned out to be none other than Chris. He winked at Arya from the side of the stage. He already had enough paintings to fill a small museum, but if it helped raise funds and made him look good for the night, so be it. Finally, Helena returned to the microphone. Friends, donors, and guests, we have surpassed our initial fundraising goal by 20%. This is a testament to your generosity and the importance you place on nurturing young talent. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thunderous applause. Arya's chest swelled with pride for Helena, and a little for herself, too. She'd helped. Helena smiled, scanning the crowd. And a special thank you to my future daughter-in-law, Arya Bennett, whose tireless dedication these past days has been instrumental. Arya froze, taken aback. She hadn't expected Helena to mention her at all, much less in front of everyone. A flush warmed her cheeks as the crowd turned to look, clapping politely. Helena caught Arya's eye and gave a small, grateful nod. In that moment, Arya felt an extraordinary sense of acceptance. For the first time, she realized Helena genuinely saw her not as an outsider, but as a future member of the Harrington family, a partner to Chris, and an ally in philanthropic endeavors. Later that night, as the gala wound down and the last guests were departing, Chris and Arya found themselves alone for a moment near the stage. Soft music still drifted through the speakers, the lights now dimmed to create a mellow ambiance. Chris placed his hands on Arya's waist, pulling her close. You were incredible tonight, he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. I'm so proud of you. Arya smiled up at him, eyes shining. It feels like a dream. I've never been to an event like this, let alone helped run one. Everyone seemed happy with the result. He nodded. They're more than happy. Mom was raving about you to half the donors. Arya rested her head on his chest. That cameo ring fiasco feels so far away now. I guess in the end, it led to something good. Mom and I connecting over a shared cause, Chris chuckled. Ironic that a fancy jewelry store's snobbery was the catalyst for you two to bond. But I'm glad it worked out. Arya's gaze traveled over the lavish surroundings. I just hope that anyone else who walks into that store, dressed like me, or maybe even less put together, gets treated better in the future. A half smile touched Chris's lips. Who knows? Maybe the manager learned a lesson. At least your cameo ring is safe in the right hands, Mom's. Arya exhaled happily, letting her fiancé's warmth envelop her. Yes, she murmured, nestling closer. Exactly where it belongs. A few days later, Arya received an unexpected phone call as she stood in the small office of the children's center where she volunteered. She was finishing some data entry for the after-school program's budget when her phone vibrated. Hello? Ms. Bennett, this is Mr. Lockwood from LaFleur & Co. Jewelers. Arya froze. The store manager? Oh, hello. His voice was measured, tinged with contrition. I hope you don't mind this call. I obtained your contact information from Mr. Harrington's public relations assistant. I wanted to offer a formal apology for the way you were treated at our establishment. It has come to our attention that we fell short of the service we strive to provide. Arya felt a pang of surprise. She wasn't sure how to respond. I see. Well, thank you for reaching out, Mr. Lockwood. I appreciate the apology. Lockwood cleared his throat. We've instituted a new policy that clarifies the steps staff must follow when verifying sales. We recognize that we can't judge a client by how they're dressed. Everyone who walks in deserves our courtesy. I hope you understand that we do have to verify transactions, but we're working to ensure it's done respectfully. Arya nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see her. I'm glad to hear that, she said. Truly. He paused. Also, Ms. Bennet, I wanted to say how much we value the Harrington family's patronage. If there's anything we can do to make amends. Arya gently cut him off. Mr. Lockwood, I don't want any special treatment. I only hope that in the future, the same courtesy is extended to anyone who walks in looking for a meaningful piece of jewelry. Lockwood sounded humbled. Understood. Thank you for taking my call, Miss Bennet, and once again, I do apologize. She ended the call, heart brimming with a mixture of satisfaction and relief. Maybe genuine change was possible. That evening, Arya and Chris sat curled up on their living room sofa, a half-eaten box of pizza balanced between them as they watched a documentary about street artists. Guess who called me today? Arya said after a moment, pausing the documentary. Chris raised an eyebrow. Who? Lafleur and Co. The manager called to apologize. Chris blinked in surprise, then gave a slow nod. Wow, that's unexpected. Did he mention new policies? Arya grinned. He did, actually. Said they're making sure all staff follow respectful verification processes. No more humiliating deposit demands or scornful looks. Chris smirked. Well, it's something. Maybe that cameo ring purchase will become a legendary cautionary tale among their employees. Arya snorted softly. One can hope. They returned to the documentary for a moment, but Arya couldn't quite focus. She found herself reflecting on how everything had changed in just a week or two. She felt a growing sense of belonging, not just with Chris. He'd always been her anchor, but also with the broader Harrington circle, especially Helena. Chris, noticing her thoughtful expression, muted the TV. Penny for your thoughts? She leaned her head against his shoulder. I was just thinking how nice it is that your mom and I have grown closer. That cameo ring fiasco, it's almost comedic that something so uncomfortable led to a deeper connection. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Life's weird like that. Sometimes the roughest moments open doors we never expected. Exactly, Arya said softly. If not for that experience, I might not have volunteered at the gala so wholeheartedly. Your mom and I might have stayed polite acquaintances, but now I actually feel like her daughter-in-law, not just her son's fiancé. Chris squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you, and I know she is too. They finished their dinner in companionable silence, the lights of the city blinking through the apartment window. Arya felt at peace, her heart full and more certain than ever that she and Chris were building a future grounded in mutual respect and love, values that surpassed any superficial notion of wealth or status. Months passed, and the cameo ring on Helena's hand became a small legend among Harrington family events. She wore it often, telling anyone who asked that it was a special gift from her future daughter-in-law. No longer was her praise for Arya polite or reserved. It was earnest, and it showed. The shift in Helena's attitude rippled through the extended Harrington family. At large gatherings, aunts and uncles who had once seemed stiff or skeptical around Arya now greeted her more warmly. She had proven in their eyes that she wasn't some gold digger or a passing fancy. She was a genuine, caring individual. Meanwhile, Chris continued to champion philanthropic causes, with Arya at his side. They organized a fundraiser for the Children's Center, raising enough money to renovate their music room. Helena even attended, cheering them on, proudly introducing Arya to friends as my soon-to-be daughter. It all felt a bit surreal at times. Arya occasionally flashed back to that moment in Lafleur & Co., hearing Genevieve's dismissive tone, feeling humiliated. How different her life could have been if she had walked away, letting the cameo slip through her fingers. She might never have forged such a deep bond with Helena, and soon there was another momentous occasion to plan for, the wedding. Arya and Chris decided to keep it relatively small, just close family, a few dear friends, minimal fanfare. Helena offered them the use of the Harringtons' summer estate upstate. Arya accepted, and the older woman immediately jumped into planning mode, ensuring every detail was perfect, yet still intimate. One afternoon, just weeks before the wedding, Helena and Arya sat together at a cafe near Central Park, sipping tea while reviewing floral arrangements. Helena wore a cream-colored suit, and on her right hand gleamed the cameo ring. Arya nibbled a cookie, glancing over the floral sketches. I can't believe we're so close to the date, she said, a mixture of excitement and nerves swirling in her chest. It feels like it was just yesterday I was shyly meeting Chris's family. Helena laughed softly, something Arya rarely heard from her before. And I can't believe how quickly you've won over not just Christopher, but everyone else. Even Robert, Christopher's father, is impressed by your dedication to philanthropic work. Arya blushed. I hope so. I know he was skeptical of me at first. Oh, he's skeptical of everyone. It's in his nature, Helena said wryly. But you've shown him you're not just here for the Harrington name. Arya studied Helena's face, noticing faint lines of relief. She realized just how important it was to Helena that the woman marrying her only son was someone she could trust and admire. Arya reached out, covering Helena's hand with her own. I'm grateful for you, Helena, she said quietly. I know it took time for us to fully connect, but I appreciate that you saw me for who I am and that you accepted me. Helena blinked, looking touched. You've made that quite easy, dear, and please, call me Mom. We're well past formalities. A rush of affection surged in Arya's chest, and she gently squeezed Helena's hand. All right, Mom. They resumed discussing flower types. Ranunculus, peonies, perhaps some wildflowers for a laid-back feel. But the conversation didn't feel like future mother and daughter-in-law forced to plan. It felt like two friends. The wedding day dawned bright, with a gentle breeze rustling through the lush gardens of the Harrington estate. White chairs were arranged in neat rows on the lawn, overlooking a glimmering pond. A floral arch framed the spot where Arya and Chris would exchange vows. Arya stood in a small anteroom inside the estate's old manor house, gazing at her reflection in a tall mirror. Her wedding gown was simple yet elegant, a sheath silhouette with delicate lace cap sleeves, a slender train, and a sweetheart neckline. No ostentatious ball gown or mile-long veil, just something that felt undeniably her. Her maid of honor, Danielle, her best friend from childhood, helped arrange the final touches. You look incredible, Danielle whispered, tears threatening in her eyes. Arya's gaze flicked from the mirror to a small window, where she could see the guests trickling in. I can't believe this is really happening. Me, marrying a Harrington. Danielle squeezed her shoulders. He's not a Harrington to you. He's Chris. You're Chris. That's all that matters. A soft knock on the door signaled Helena's entrance. She wore a floor-length dove-gray gown, her hair swept into a loose chignon, exuding timeless sophistication. On her hand still sparkled the cameo ring, a silent testament to how far they had come. May I have a moment with the bride? Helena asked Danielle, who politely excused herself. Helena stepped forward, eyes shining with emotion. She reached for Arya's hands. You are stunning, my dear. Christopher is a lucky man. Arya's breath caught. Thank you, Mom. Helena leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to Arya's cheek. I want to give you something. She opened a small velvet pouch she carried and retrieved a thin gold chain with a delicate rose pendant cameo that complemented the ring she wore. I had this custom made to match your ring. Consider it my wedding gift to you. Tears pricked Arya's eyes. Helena, it's lovely. Thank you. I know how you feel about subtle jewelry, Helena said softly, so I kept it minimal. The cameo is carved from the same type of shell. I thought we could be cameo twins. Arya laughed through her tears, hugging Helena carefully so as not to muss their dresses. I love it. I'll wear it every day. Helena fastened the necklace around Arya's neck. The tiny cameo nestled just above her collarbone, a small but precious piece signifying the bond they had forged. Outside, under a bright sky and the soft rustle of leaves, Arya walked down the aisle to Chris. He stood waiting with a beaming smile, his eyes shining like she was the only person in the world. As they joined hands, Arya remembered the scuffed boots and worn sweater she'd worn that day at Lafleur & Co. She remembered feeling belittled by strangers who saw only an unassuming woman. Now, here she was in a place of honor, marrying the man she adored, surrounded by his family's support and acceptance. The officiant spoke of love, partnership, and mutual respect. Chris squeezed Arya's hand, whispering, I love you, when her eyes brimmed with happy tears. She whispered it back. Then came the exchange of vows. Arya's voice trembled slightly, recalling the earliest days of their relationship, the stolen moments of laughter, the volunteer work that first made her realize Chris was more than his last name, And yes, the cameo ring fiasco that led her into Helena's heart. Chris spoke of how Arya's kindness and tenacity inspired him daily. He promised a life of teamwork, compassion, and honesty. Finally, they exchanged rings, simple gold bands that mirrored each other's. Chris gently slipped hers on, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. The officiant smiled. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." In prosody, they leaned in, sealing their union with a tender kiss that drew applause and cheers from their loved ones. At the reception, held on the manor's wide terrace, Helena stood with a champagne flute to make a toast. She acknowledged her new daughter-in-law with radiant pride. The cameo ring and matching necklace were visible as she lifted her glass. "To Arya," Helena said, voice full of warmth. "Thank you for bringing such light and authenticity into our family. And to Christopher, who's found in you a partner for life. May you both continue your shared passion for making this world a better place, together." Glassware clinked amid cheers, and Arya felt tears welling. She looked at Chris, who mouthed, "I love you." She mouthed the same back. In the swirl of music, dancing, and heartfelt congratulations, Arya found herself reflecting on the unpredictability of life's twists. Who would have guessed that a humiliating moment in a jewelry boutique would sow the seeds for a deeper bond with Helena and ultimately add layers of understanding and empathy to her path? Sometimes the hardest encounters carried lessons in humility, resilience, and forging unexpected connections. Some weeks after the wedding, Arya and Chris visited the Children's Center to see how the newly renovated music room was coming along. The walls were freshly painted, a line of colorful instruments neatly organized on shelves, and a new piano stood in one corner. A group of kids burst into excited chatter upon seeing Arya and Chris. They offered high fives, eager to show off what they'd learned. Chris knelt beside one child who was proudly demonstrating a chord progression on the piano. Arya looked on, a soft smile on her face. She pressed a hand over the cameo necklace Helena had gifted her. She wore it often now, a gentle reminder of the family she had gained. A small beep from her phone drew her attention. She glanced at the notification, an email from Helena with an attached photo. Opening it, Arya saw a picture of Helena's cameo ring, side by side with Arya's cameo necklace, resting on a plush velvet background. Underneath, Helena had typed, "Always connected, cameo twins." "Love, Mom." Arya felt a warmth bloom in her chest. She realized that in forging this relationship with Helena, indeed with the entire Harrington clan, she had proven that people, not possessions, defined true worth. Wealth could buy a cameo ring, but it was empathy, respect, and love that ultimately wove their hearts together. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, turned to join Chris at the piano, and leaned in to whisper, "I love you." He smiled, eyes dancing. "Always." And at that moment, in the quiet hum of the Children's Center, surrounded by the notes of an earnest little pianist, Arya felt a sense of completeness, knowing that no matter where life led, she and Chris would face it side by side, buoyed by family who truly saw her for who she was.